Welcome to online CET class. So in this class we will discuss synopsis of heat and thermodynamics. So the first thing, what is heat? Heat is a form of energy which flows from body at higher temperature to body at lower temperature. So when heat is added to a body, its temperature increases. When heat is removed from a body, its temperature decreases. So temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of the body. So temperature measurement is done using an instrument called thermometer. So to measure temperature, there are different scales used: Celsius scale, Fahrenheit scale, and Kelvin scale. So all the thermometers which have different scaling of measure, they can be calibrated using the formula x minus LFP divided by UFP minus LFP, where x is measured value of temperature on the scale, LFP is lower fixed point which is melting ice temperature, UFP is upper fixed point, it is steam temperature, that is boiling point of water. So in different scales these values will be different, so they will be taken as standard. In any scale this value should be constant. So this value on one scale can be equated to value on the other scale. So this formula will be useful for converting temperature from one scale to other scale. So thermometers are made up of glass which use either liquid or gases. So for example, mercury thermometer is a liquid thermometer. So gaseous thermometer, ideal gas thermometer are also present. So this is about measurement of temperature. Then one common phenomena that is observed with respect to rise in temperature is whenever temperature of an object is increased, that means whenever a material is heated, then it undergoes expansion. So all materials expand on heating. So coming to expansion of solids, so most of the materials expand on heating. So expansion is nature of the material. Different materials expand to different extents when heated through same level of temperature. So the nature of material which is responsible for the expansion, to the extent what extent it will expand, so that is given by a quantity called expansion coefficient. So for solids we can define three different kinds of expansion and coefficients. So coefficient of linear expansion, when length of the object increases, it is denoted by alpha. Coefficient of areal expansion or superficial expansion, it is denoted by beta. Coefficient of volume or cubical expansion, that is denoted by gamma. So relation between alpha, beta and gamma is alpha is to beta is to gamma is 1 is to 2 is to 3, that is beta is equal to 2 alpha, gamma is equal to 3 alpha, or beta is equal to 2 gamma by 3, gamma is equal to 3 by 2 beta. So these relations are applicable for any isotropic material where atoms expand equally in all directions. So expansion coefficient should be same in all the directions. Only for those materials it will be valid. So for anisotropic materials, the coefficient of expansion will be alpha is equal to alpha x plus alpha y plus alpha z divided by 3, where alpha x is expansion coefficient along x axis, alpha y is that along y axis, alpha z is that along z axis. Then alpha can be defined as L2 minus L1 divided by L1 delta T, where L1 is initial length, L2 is final length, delta T is change in temperature. Or you can write L2 is equal to L1 into 1 plus alpha delta T, where delta T is change in temperature. So L1 is equal to L2 into 1 minus alpha delta T. Similarly, beta is equal to A2 minus A1 divided by A1 delta T. A2 is equal to A1 into 1 plus beta delta T. So A1 is equal to A2 into 1 minus beta delta t. In the same way, gamma is equal to V2 minus V1 divided by V1 delta t. V2 is equal to, not minus, V2 is equal to V1 into 1 plus gamma delta t, or V1 is equal to V2 into 1 minus gamma delta t. So these relation will be useful for problem solving. Then when two different rods of linear coefficient alpha 1 alpha 2 and length L1 and L2 of same temperature difference, they are heated, the difference in their lengths remains the same at all the temperatures. So that means L1 alpha 1 should be equal to L2 alpha 2. This can be used for solving problems. If L be the length of the rod at T1, which is measured correctly at T0 using the scale, if alpha 1 alpha 2 are temperature coefficients of rod and scale, then LC is equal to LT into 1 minus alpha 1 minus alpha 2 into delta T. So when you heat or when you change the temperature, the scale also expands, the rod also expands. So here in this relation, LC is correct length of the rod, LT is measured length of the rod, and T is temperature in degree Celsius. Then coming to expansion of liquids, when a liquid is taken in a container, expansion of the liquid is calculated along with the expansion of the container. Container also expands, contents also expand. So the liquids in the place of one expansion, they have two expansion coefficients. So one is real expansion coefficient gamma r and apparent expansion coefficient. Notice one thing, here there is no linear or superficial expansion for liquid, there is only volume expansion because liquids do not have a definite shape. So they have only definite volume. So real expansion coefficient and apparent expansion coefficient. So two expansion coefficients have to be defined with respect to liquids because the container in which the liquid is taken for heating, that also undergoes expansion. So gamma real and gamma apparent and gamma of the vessel, all the three are related by this relation. Gamma A is equal to gamma r minus gamma of the vessel. This is one relation. Or gamma apparent is equal to gamma r minus 3 alpha. This is another relation because gamma g can be taken as 3 alpha because it is a solid. This is for vessel. Two containers of different materials are filled with same liquid of gamma r. If gamma A and gamma A dash are apparent expansion coefficients in those two containers, then gamma A is equal to gamma r into 3 alpha 1 alpha 2, where alpha 2 is coefficient of expansion of two containers. Alpha 1 and alpha 2 are expansion of two containers. So gamma A dash is equal to gamma r minus 3 alpha 2. Now coming to gas laws. The state of a given mass of gas is completely determined by the state variables, what we call it as pressure, volume and temperature. When a gas is heated, both its pressure and volume undergo change. So hence there must be two coefficients of expansion for gas. One is volume coefficient of expansion, other is, or you can call it as coefficient of expansion of a gas at constant pressure, and another one is pressure coefficient of expansion which is taking place at constant volume. So alpha is volume coefficient, that is Vt minus V0 divided by V0 into T, or V2 minus V1 divided by V1 T2 minus V2 T1. This is volume coefficient of expansion. Pressure coefficient of expansion is Pt minus P0 divided by P0 T, or P2 minus P1 divided by P1 T2 minus P2 T1. So for all ideal gases, alpha and beta values, that is volume coefficient and pressure coefficient values, that is equal to 1 divided by 273.15 per Kelvin. per Kelvin or per degree Celsius is unit of all expansion coefficients. So now coming to gas laws. So gas laws are the laws that give the relation between pressure, volume and temperature for a given mass of gas. For a given mass of gas, relation between pressure, volume and temperature is given by gas laws. Now moving further, the first gas law is Boyle's law. It states that at constant temperature, the volume of given mass of gas is inversely proportional to pressure. So P is inversely proportional to V, or PV is equal to constant, or P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2. This is state equation for Boyle's law. Then second law is Charles' law. So at constant pressure, volume of given mass of gas varies directly as absolute temperature. That is, V is directly proportional to T, or V by T is equal to constant. You can say V1 by T1 is equal to V2 by T2. So similarly, at constant volume, pressure is directly proportional to temperature, or P is by T is equal to constant. P by T1 is equal to P1 by T1 is equal to P2 by T2. So this is what we call it as Gay-Lussac's law. Now coming to perfect gas equation. So according to perfect gas equation, PV is equal to nRT or mu RT, where n is number of moles of the gas. That is, for given mass of gas, P1 V1 by T1 is equal to P2 V2 by T2. So R is called universal gas constant. Its value is 8.31 joule per mole per Kelvin. Coming to isothermal and adiabatic processes. Isothermal process is a thermodynamic process in which changes in pressure and volume of gas takes place at constant temperature. Adiabatic process is a process where the change in pressure and volume change takes place at complete thermal isolation. So here temperature remains constant, here temperature is not constant, that is also a variable. So in isothermal process, there is exchange of heat between system and surroundings. Any amount of heat can be added or removed to maintain the same temperature. Whereas in adiabatic process, there is no exchange of heat between system and surroundings. So strictly it is not allowed. So heat content of the system remains constant in adiabatic process. So in isothermal system, it is in good thermal communication with surroundings, but in adiabatic system it is completely isolated. So isothermal process is generally a very slow process, need not be, but generally a very slow process. But adiabatic process is generally sudden or rapid process. So for an isothermal process, PV is equal to constant. This is the state equation. Adiabatic process, PV to the power gamma is equal to constant. This is the state equation. Now coming to equation of state, for ideal gas, PV is equal to nRT. This is equation of state. Moving on to specific heat capacities of gases. A body absorbs heat when it is at lower temperature than its surroundings. The absorption of heat by a body results in increase in temperature. So heat capacity or thermal capacity of a body is defined as quantity of heat energy required to rise the temperature of certain quantity of substance through 1 degree Kelvin or 1 degree Celsius. So this is called heat capacity. If it is taken for unit mass, then it is specific heat capacity. So if Q amount of heat is absorbed by a body to rise the temperature by delta theta, then Q is equal to C into delta theta, where C is thermal capacity or heat capacity. Its unit is joule per Kelvin. So specific heat is the quantity of heat required to rise the temperature of unit mass of body by 1 degree Kelvin. So its unit is joule per kg per Kelvin. So Q is equal to mc delta theta, where delta theta is change in temperature. C is called specific heat. So if you define it for unit mass of substance, it is specific heat. If you define it for per mole of a substance, it is called molar specific heat. So it is defined as heat capacity per mole of a substance. So it is C by N. So the molar specific heat of a substance is specific heat divided by number of moles. Then coming to latent heat, the heat energy supplied during the change of state, that is from solid to liquid or liquid to gas, how much energy it absorbs, that is given by latent heat. Heat supplied during this is given by M into L, where L is latent heat. So it is denoted, it is measured in joule per kg. So a substance will have two latent heats. One is latent heat of fusion, that is during melting, and latent heat of vaporization. This comes into play during vaporization or boiling. So for water, that is ice, latent heat of fusion of ice is 3.36 into 10 power 5 joule per kg or 80 calorie per gram. Whereas latent heat of vaporization of steam is 2.26 into 10 to the power 6 joule per kg or 540 calorie per gram. So coming to principle of calorimetry. So according to principle of calorimetry, heat lost by hot body is equal to heat gained by cold body when you mix two substances at different temperatures are mixed in thermal isolation. Thermal isolation means heat can be exchanged within the system, but it cannot exchange heat with surroundings. So in such case, heat lost by hot body should be equal to heat gained by cold body. Coming to specific heat of gases. So gases can be heated in different conditions. So you can define many number of specific heats for a gas. Out of so many specific heats, these two are important: specific heat at constant pressure and specific heat at constant volume. So specific heat at constant volume is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of unit mass of gas through 1 Kelvin at constant volume. Similarly, the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of unit mass of gas through 1 Kelvin at constant pressure is called specific heat at constant pressure. So if you define it for 1 mole instead of unit mass, so if you define it for 1 mole, then it is called molar specific heat at constant volume and molar specific heat at constant pressure. So if Cp and Cv are molar specific heats at constant pressure and constant volume, then Cp minus Cv is equal to R. So this is called Mayer's equation. So for any gas, Cp is always greater than Cv. This is because during the supply of heat at constant pressure, in both the cases Cp and Cv, that is constant pressure or constant volume, whichever the condition you are heating it at, so you have to increase the temperature by same amount. But in case of constant pressure, you are supplying heat which is utilized for rising temperature also, and it will perform, the system will perform work also in order to maintain constant pressure. But at constant volume, all the heat that you supply is utilized for rising temperature only, there is no work done. So Cp is always greater than Cv. So Cp minus Cv is equal to R. This itself says Cp is greater than Cv. Then ratio of specific heat Cp to Cv is denoted by gamma. Gamma is equal to Cp by Cv. So gamma is called atomicity of gas. Yes, moving further. So we have Cv is equal to 3 by 2 R and Cp is equal to 5 by 2 R for monoatomic gas, and gamma is equal to Cp by Cv, that will be 5 by 3, that is 1.67. This is true for all monoatomic gases. So coming to modes of heat transfer. So heat can be transferred in different ways. One is the conduction. So conduction is a process which takes place in case of solids, particularly metallic conductors. So transmission of heat through a body without actual movement of the particles of the body or particle of the medium. So that is called conduction. So in the case of metals, the heat transfer takes place by means of conduction. So here we come across a concept called steady state. So when there is no absorption of heat by any element of the rod through which the heat is conducted, so rod is said to be in steady state. So the material stops absorbing any more heat. So all the heat that is supplied, it is either transmitted or radiated to the surroundings. So that state we call it as steady state. So now we will come to concept of thermal conductivity. So the quantity of heat conducted through any element of the rod under steady state is given by Q is equal to Ka into theta 1 minus theta 2 divided by L, where theta 1 is temperature of the hot end, theta 2 is temperature of the cold end, and L is the length of the rod between the hot and cold ends. A is area of cross section of the rod, and T is time for which the heat is allowed to pass. K is called the constant, that is coefficient of thermal conductivity or thermal conductivity of the material of the rod. So thermal conductivity is constant for given material. It varies from one material to other material. And here theta 1 minus theta 2 divided by L is called temperature gradient, and at steady state this temperature gradient throughout the rod remains constant. Then if you calculate heat current, that is Q by T, that will be theta 1 minus theta 2 divided by L by Ka. K and A are sent to the denominator. So this can be taken as thermal resistance R. So R is equal to L by Ka. So this is called thermal resistance, and this rule can be taken as Ohm's law for thermal conductivity. So just like what we had Ohm's law in current electricity, same kind of thing. The unit of thermal resistance is Kelvin per watt. So next mode of heat transfer is convection of heat. So it takes place in case of liquids and gases, that is in fluids. So it is a mode of transfer of heat due to actual movement of particles. So particles with greater temperature, higher temperature, they actually move to the region of colder regions of the medium. By this the heat is transmitted. So that is what we call it as convection of heat. So convection due to differences in the density between the different parts of a fluid. So that is what we call it as natural convection. So convection is due to forced movement of the heated fluid by a blower or a pump. If you make the particles of the medium move by means of an external pump, then it is called forced convection. Then coming to radiation, it is a process of transmission of heat from one place to another without the aid of any intervening medium. Medium is not at all involved here. So thermal radiations are electromagnetic radiations, that is infrared radiations. So thermal radiation can be detected using thermopiles, bolometer or radiometer. So coming to the concept of black body, a black body is an object which absorbs all the incident radiation on it irrespective of the frequency. If it absorbs all the incident radiation, then it is called perfect black body. Then coming to the concept of emissive power, emissive power of a body is defined as ratio of quantity of thermal radiation emitted per second by unit area of the surface to the radiation emitted per second by unit area of a perfect black body. So if you take the ratio of radiation emitted per unit area per unit time of a body to that of a black body, perfect black body, under identical condition, that means under same temperature, then the ratio is called emissive power. It is denoted by E. Similarly, absorptive power. So absorptive power of a body is defined as ratio of quantity of thermal radiation absorbed by it in a given time to the quantity of radiation incidented on it in the same time. So it is denoted by generally A, not F, A. The absorptive power of a black body is taken as unity, that is equal to 1. So absorptive power of any other substance is less than 1. If it is not a black body, it is less than 1. For black body, it is highest, that is equal to 1. So no object in the universe is a perfect black body. So perfect black body is just an approximation. Let's moving further. So Stephen's law, or it is also called as Stephen's fourth power law. So according to Stephen's law, the total radiation emitted per second per unit area of the surface of a black body, it is directly proportional to fourth power of the absolute temperature. So energy emitted per unit area per unit time, E is proportional to T to the power 4, where T is absolute temperature of the surface of the black body, and E is equal to sigma T to the power 4, where sigma is proportionality constant. It's a universal constant called Stephen's constant. So SI unit of sigma is watt per meter square per Kelvin to the power 4, and value of sigma is 5.67 into 10 to the power minus 8 watt per meter square Kelvin to the power 4. So coming to Kirchhoff's law of radiation, according to this, good absorber is a good emitter. So if E is equal to 1, then A is equal to 1. So E is equal to A. So that is what, that is emissive power will be equal to absorptive power. How much ever it absorbs, so much ever it will emit. So a body which absorbs at low temperature, it will emit all the absorbed radiation at higher temperature. That is what Kirchhoff's law of radiation says. Then coming to Newton's law of cooling. So it states that the rate of loss of heat by a body is directly proportional to temperature difference between the system and the surroundings, provided the temperature difference is small. So rate of loss of heat is nothing but d theta by dt. It is proportional to theta minus theta naught. We can introduce a proportionality constant. Theta naught is surrounding temperature, theta is instantaneous temperature of the system. So coming to Wien's displacement law. So according to Wien's displacement law, the product of wavelength corresponding to maximum intensity it is inversely proportional to absolute temperature of the black body, or lambda m into T is equal to constant. You can write it as lambda m is inversely proportional to T, or lambda m into T is equal to constant. So this constant is denoted by B. The value of B is 0.029 meter Kelvin. So Wien's displacement law can be used to explain the change of color of iron rod when it is heated. When you heat it, initially it becomes red hot. Then if you further heat it, temperature increases, so it will become blue hot. So you know very well red has greater wavelength than blue. When the temperature increases, wavelength emitted decreases. So Wien's displacement law is used to calculate surface temperatures of the stars and other celestial bodies. Now coming to thermodynamics. So thermodynamics is the branch of physics which deals with all the processes involving heat and mechanical work. So in between we come across the concept of internal energy associated with the system also. So first definition here is thermodynamic system. So a definite quantity of matter considered under consideration, that is what we call it as thermodynamic system. So rest of the universe in the system we call it as, apart from system whatever is there, that is what we call it as surroundings. So coming to thermodynamic equilibrium, a system is said to be in thermodynamic equilibrium if it is in thermal, mechanical and chemical equilibrium, then it is said to be thermodynamic equilibrium. Coming to thermodynamic process. So thermodynamic process is a process in which there is a change from one thermodynamic state to another thermodynamic state. See, thermodynamic state means it is denoted by P, V and T, pressure, volume and temperature, one set of these variables forms one state. So if it changes from this to this, any one of the variables is changed, then we say it is a change in thermodynamic state. So the process involving such a change, we call it as thermodynamic process. So some of the thermodynamic processes are isothermal process, which we have seen already. Then adiabatic process, this also we have seen. Isobaric process, this is the process where pressure remains constant. Isochoric process, volume remains constant. Then a reversible process, which can be carried in forward as well as backward direction. At any point you can reverse it with the same ease. Irreversible process, which cannot be reversed. Cyclic process, the process which repeats after completing so many steps. And then non-cyclic process. So these are some of the thermodynamic processes. So coming to concept of internal energy. So every system possesses a certain amount of energy called internal energy. So this is due to the energies possessed by the molecules of the system. So it is denoted by U. Indicator diagram or PV diagram, it's a graph of pressure against volume for a system. So it helps to calculate the quantity of work done. Area under PV diagram gives you work done. Then coming to first law of thermodynamics. According to first law of thermodynamics, heat supplied to a system dQ is equal to change in its internal energy du plus work done by the system. So heat supplied to a system, it is utilized for increasing internal energy partly, and partly it is utilized for doing work. So this is nothing but restatement of law of conservation of energy. So notice one thing, du is change in internal energy, dq is heat added to the system. So if heat is added to the system, dq is taken positive. If internal energy increases, du is positive. Work is done by the system, dw is positive. If work is done on the system, dw is negative. So remember, only du can be measured, u can never be measured experimentally. So dq is taken as positive when heat is absorbed by the system. When system loses heat, it is taken as negative. dw is taken positive when work is done by the system. If work is done on the system, it is taken as negative. du is positive when there is increase in internal energy. It is negative when there is decrease in internal energy. So if we apply first law of thermodynamics to different thermodynamic processes. For isothermal process, temperature is constant, so internal energy change is 0. Then dq is equal to dw. All the heat that you supply will be converted to work. Then work done during isothermal process is given by 2.303 RT log of V2 by V1 or 2.303 RT log of P1 by P2. This is for 1 mole of a gas. If it is n moles, it will be nRT or mu moles mu RT. Then adiabatic process. In this process, dq is equal to 0, no heat is supplied, du is equal to minus dw. So if it is a free expansion, then du is equal to 0 for adiabatic process, free expansion process. So work done is equal to Cv into T1 minus T2. Work done during adiabatic process is W is equal to R divided by gamma minus 1 into T1 minus T2. This is per mole of a gas. If n moles are taken, you have to take nR. Then for isochoric process, dq is equal to du, dw is equal to 0, no expansion is allowed. In isobaric process, work done is P into V2 minus V1. So now coming to the concept of heat engine. So heat engine is a device which continuously converts thermal energy into useful mechanical energy. So in a heat engine, a certain material called working substance is taken through a cyclic process so that continuously it can produce the mechanical work. So during the process, working substance absorbs heat from a source at high temperature. So it's a high temperature reservoir and performs some work and rejects the remaining heat to a low temperature reservoir, what we call it as sink. So there will be source and sink, in between there is working substance. So efficiency of a heat engine is given by work done divided by heat absorbed per cycle. So W divided by Q1. So if Q2 is the heat rejected to the sink, then Q1 minus Q2 gives you W from conservation of energy. Then Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1 will give you eta, that is efficiency, that is equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1. Then coming to Carnot engine. So it's an ideal heat engine. So working substance is taken as ideal gas. So it is free from all losses, no friction, nothing, no dissipative forces involved here. So working substance is ideal gas, or what we call it as perfect gas. So it is the most efficient engine that is possible. Then coming to Carnot cycle. The working substance in Carnot cycle is taken through a reversible cycle of 4 operations constituting 2 adiabatic changes and 2 isothermal changes. So this cycle is called Carnot cycle. Then efficiency of Carnot heat engine is given by 1 minus Q2 by Q1 or 1 minus T2 by T1. This can be proved, where T1 is temperature of hot reservoir, that is source, and T2 is that of sink. Coming to second law of thermodynamics. So there are many ways in which this can be stated. First one is Kelvin-Planck statement. So it states that it is impossible to construct a heat engine operating in a cyclic process produces no other effect than absorption of heat from a body and performance of equal amount of work. So another way of saying this is Closius statement. So it states that it is impossible to construct a device that operates in a cyclic process to produce no effect other than continuous transfer of heat from one body to another body at a higher temperature. That means there cannot be any process whose sole result is transfer of heat from a cold body to hot body. So you cannot make heat to flow from body at lower temperature to body at higher temperature on its own. That is what Closius statement says. So coming to refrigerator. So refrigerator is a Carnot's engine operating in reverse order. So Carnot's engine takes heat from hot reservoir, converts a part of it to work and rejects remaining heat to sink. But in refrigerator it is reverse of it. It takes heat from cold reservoir, and for that external source does work on the working substance, then it will reject heat to the hot reservoir. So it is also called as heat pump. So it absorbs heat from cold body. During this, an amount of work is done on it, not by it, and it rejects the heat to the body at higher temperature at each cycle of operation. So just like efficiency, for refrigerator we define something called beta, that is coefficient of performance. It is given by Q2 by W, where Q2 is heat removed from the cold body and W is work done by external source. So it will be Q2 divided by Q1 minus Q2, or you can write it as T2 divided by T1 minus T2, where T2 is the temperature inside the refrigerator, that is contents of the refrigerator. T1 is surrounding temperature. Now coming to Carnot's theorem. So it states that no real heat engine operating between two heat reservoirs can be more efficient than a reversible Carnot engine operating between the same two temperatures. So for the given two temperatures, the most efficient engine is Carnot engine. So no engine can be more efficient than reversible Carnot engine. That's what Carnot's theorem says. Then coming to the last concept here, that is entropy. So entropy is a measure of disorderliness of the system. If a small amount of heat is given to a system at temperature T, then change in entropy of a system is defined as ds is equal to dq by T, where ds is change in entropy, dq is heat added to the system, and T is temperature at which it is added. So that is about entropy of the system. So that's all about heat and thermodynamics. Thank you.